welcome to the Health Channel. All health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida studios in Coral Gables. Do you sometimes have sudden attacks of anxiety and an overwhelming fear that lasts for several minutes at unpredictable times and are coming along with no obvious trigger? Maybe your heart pounds, you sweat, and you feel like you can't breathe or think? Well, you may have a type of anxiety disorder called panic disorder. And joining us today to talk about anxiety disorders ranging from generalized anxiety to obsessive compulsive disorder is Dr. Paula Levine, Director of the Miami Counseling Resource Center. Welcome, Dr. Levine. Thank you so much for being here, especially being such a personal story. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right,
I'm thrilled.
Let's start we're talking about panic disorder. Tell me a little bit, what is a panic disorder?
So a panic disorder is a series of discrete events that we have to call panic attacks before we even generalize and call something panic disorder. Some people have panic attacks infrequently, and we wouldn't go on to necessarily diagnose them as having panic disorder.
But you often hear people say, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack.
Yes.
I'm having a panic attack.
Yes.
I'm dying.
Right.
And it's used so loosely, and it's sometimes, but this is how it feels though,
Yes.
correct?
So let me explain.
Yes.
Because there's a language thing here. I'm panicked, I'm panicking, I'm overwhelmed, I'm having a panic attack. Because now people Google everything and they know what a panic attack is.
Right.
Back in the day, everyone having a panic attack actually thought they were having a heart attack. And the first thing they did was race themselves to an emergency room. So a panic attack is a discrete event. It's physiological. Sometimes it's called cardiorespiratory,
Okay.
heart and breathing. And in order to qualify as a full-blown panic attack, it has to consist of 4 symptoms, all of which are going off sort of at a very high level. So there are multiple symptoms of anxiety, right? But if you're having a rapid heartbeat and shortness of breath and sweaty palms and light and tingling feelings in your extremities, that would be 4. And they'd
Right.
all have to be sort of going off at 100 all at once, if you're thinking about a scale of 0 to 100. That's a full-blown panic attack. Other things are called limited symptom attacks, where
Okay.
maybe what you get when you're anxious is rapid heartbeat, or what you get when you're anxious is sweaty palms, but you don't get that cluster of 4 symptoms all at once. So you'd be mistaken to call that a full-blown panic attack. Does that make sense?
That makes
Okay.
sense, but I feel like even whether you have the lighter symptoms or not, it affects your quality of life.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, when you have those panic attacks or when you have anxiety, it's like the world shuts down around
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
So is it important to get this treated so it doesn't affect your quality of life?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's terrorizing,
Right.
to walk around feeling that I'm anxious at this moment, or I might be anxious in the next
Right.
moment. That's really what triggers sort of all the anxiety disorders, is the fear of the next moment.
When you see a patient come into your office describing these symptoms, and often it's a panic attack or some sort of anxiety, what's the first thing that you look for?
Well, what we were just talking about are the physiological components of anxiety. So when people walk in and say, I'm just in a state of panic all the time, or I'm an obsessive worrier, or I can't seem to calm down, I sort of wonder about how much of that's going on in your body, how much of that's going on in your mind, and then how does it affect you behaviorally? Are you becoming phobic? Are you becoming avoidant because of these fears
Right.
and because of this anxiety? So there's sort of 3 components to look for. There's what's going on in the body, what's going on in the mind, and what's going on behaviorally in terms of approach or avoidance behaviors.
We did mention some symptoms like the heart pounding, the sweating, you feel like you can't breathe, and there's so many
Right.
symptoms. We do have a graphic that shows some of these symptoms of a panic disorder. If you can walk us through some of these, and actually some you have already mentioned, but it would be great to sort of go over them.
Sure. Well, again, just to sort of qualify the panic attack from having full-blown panic disorder, because I want people to understand that one panic attack doesn't necessarily qualify you as a person who's, diagnosable as having panic disorder. One panic attack would include at least 4 of those, okay? So you'd have the trembling and the shakiness, would have the chest pain, you might have the rapid heartbeat, and you might have the sweating. And you might have more than 4, but 4 would qualify you as having a full-blown panic attack. At any one point in time, though, if you're a person who, for example, carries your tension in your chest, you'd say, oh, I'm feeling panicky. And I'd say, well, what's really going on? Well, there's tightness in my chest. Is there anything else going on in your
Right.
body? Well, no, not really. So then we get to, well, what's going on in your mind?
Right.
Like, what's the terror all about? What's the fear all about? What are the what-ifs all about?
The what ifs,
The tyranny of the what-ifs.
the tyranny of the what ifs.
Right.
I know that a lot of a lot of them also include dizziness. I know for me, it's like that stomach drop, that abdominal distress that you get from that worrying. So these are some other symptoms, correct, of the panic disorders, or you feel like you're going crazy.
Exactly. The fear of loss of control, everybody fears. The fear of dying is not uncommon. The derealization or depersonalization of feeling of being outside of myself. I'm not real, I'm not here, I'm someplace else, I'm not me. They're all, what people have to understand is that was a great list. They are all symptoms of anxiety. You're not dying. You're not outside of yourself. You're not having a heart attack.
But when you're in that moment of anxiety, this is what you're feeling.
Exactly, exactly. And the panic attack itself is a discrete event. So it peaks at about 3 minutes, and it shouldn't be lasting more than 15 or 20 minutes max.
Right.
So when people say, oh, I'm just panicking all day long, they're not.
They're not.
They might be anxious all day long.
Those 3 minutes feel like 3 hours.
And they might be panicking all day long or anxious all day long because there's really something in their life that's going on that's unresolved.
Right.
There's illness that they've just found out about. There's, their kid is having problems in school. There's something that causes them to feel not at ease. The word dis-ease is not at ease. And that's what anxiety is. It's elevated physiological responsiveness to kind of what's going on in your life.
And is it more prevalent in women than men, or? Oh gosh. I feel like that's women.
The statistics say 2.5 times more prevalent in women. And there are reasons for that. Some of them are myths, I think, and some of them are reality. I think we have a whole hormonal system, that men don't have. I think we have menstruation once a month that men don't have.
Right.
And I think that we have an emotional attunement to things in our lives that some men don't necessarily have or don't take as seriously.
Right.
Lots of different theories about that.
And you use something called the subjective units of disturbance. Is this correct, to diagnose a panic attack? We do have a graphic. What is that?
I don't use it to diagnose. I use it to educate.
Okay.
I invented this a long time ago and had somebody draw it for me.
Okay.
Actually, on a thermometer to sort of suggest that anxiety. So subjective units of disturbance or distress is the same thing as saying this is an anxiety scale. But I love the word subjective. It means this is how I experience anxiety, which is different than you.
Yes.
My palms are sweating, but your heart is beating rapidly.
And that's important to know. And not everyone suffers anxiety the same way. Because someone might say that, it's like, oh, you don't have anxiety. This is what anxiety is.
Right. And not everyone suffers it in the same situations. Like you and I are comfortable in front of a camera. I invited somebody to come on with me today and said, I'm not coming on television. That's just not something that I do.
Right.
So what I'm demonstrating here is the fluidity of anxiety. So it's a scale from 0 to 100, with 0 representing, the calmest and most relaxed we can feel, which is usually when we're fast asleep. Immediately the beginning of our day, 20. We move up to 20. It's average working state. But look at the increments before one gets to a full-blown panic attack. So what I can explain to my patients is we can catch it at 30 or 40. We can learn some anxiety management techniques at that point to bring the anxiety down rather than having it, go all the way up to 100.
And is there intense worry when the next? I know, not that is there. There is that intense worry we discussed, that a person who suffers from panic attacks sort of lives in fear of the next one happening.
Absolutely.
So why does that occur?
Can I answer a different question first?
Absolutely, go ahead.
That's what panic disorder is. The difference between discrete panic attacks and panic disorder is I'm in fear of the next one. I live in fear of the next one.
Gosh, what a
By the way,
horrible way
some
to
people never have a next one. But the alternative to that is my living in fear of the next one makes it much more likely that I'm going to bring one on. Because think about it. If all I'm thinking about is having the next anxiety
You're
attack,
going to have one.
I'm going to have one
at some point.
That SUDS level is going to start to rise.
And then that sort of turns into many things, because then that can turn into something called agoraphobia.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And we hear this term.
Yes.
What is it for our viewers at home that may not know what agoraphobia is?
So I'm going to tell a quick story, may I?
Tell a quick story.
So in 1977, Phil Donahue mentioned the word agoraphobia on the air for the first time. That was many, many, many years ago. I was searching for a PhD dissertation topic at that point in time, and I got interested in agoraphobia. And I researched it enough to know, I'm going to go to my committee, my research committee, and say, this is what I'd like to do my study on. 3 out of the 5 members of my committee had never heard the term before. So there it was in social media, on television, Phil Donahue had a woman or a few patients on, I think at the time, who talked about how housebound they were. And then shortly thereafter, out came a book called Women Who Marry Their Houses. There was no mention of panic attack or panic disorder. It was described as a phobia, which nobody understood. So there were false interpretations about it. Women who were afraid to go out in public, women who needed to stay close to their homes, with no mention of the fact that the panic attacks had preceded this fear of leaving their homes.
That it was an actual disorder.
Absolutely.
That they, so just to reiterate, agoraphobia is a fear of leaving one's home.
No.
Okay.
Agoraphobia, sorry that I talked about women who leave their houses because I hate that title so much. Agora in Greek means marketplace. So if we took it literally, it would mean I'm afraid of the marketplace. I'm afraid of wide open spaces. I'm afraid of the outdoors. What it is I am afraid to be out in the world in case I experience another panic attack. So I stay close to home, so if I'm having a panic attack, I can at least have it in my home.
And what are the symptoms of someone with agoraphobia?
They talk about quality of life.
Yeah, that's...
There are people, I shouldn't just keep saying women, that are homebound. My therapy with them begins at home.
Because they won't even come to your office.
Block. They won't go out to the mailbox to get their mail. Oh, because they won't come to the office. If you're agoraphobic, fully blown agoraphobic, you don't drive, you take no forms of transportation, you rarely socialize unless it's in the comfort of your own home or maybe one particular restaurant in your neighborhood that you're comfortable in.
What kind of therapy do you begin to do with someone who has this, I would say, an ailment? Because what do you do?
So therapy consists of working with the body. Remember, we talked about all the physiological symptoms. Working with the mind that we haven't really gotten to yet, but that's where the fear lives.
That's where the fear lives.
All the what ifs, that tyranny of the the tyranny of the what ifs. It's all cognitive. That's not. I can be perfectly calm, and yet have such fearful thoughts. My body isn't involved. It's almost like a disconnect between the body and the mind. But I've become so habituated to these fearful thoughts, these what ifs, the oh my gods, the if I go out, X, Y, and Z will happen. I can be sitting at home perfectly calm, but I'm plagued by my own thinking. So the treatment has to do with the body, the mind, and then ultimately behavior, getting people out of their homes.
So the cognitive behavioral therapy, talk a little bit about that, and at what point do you consider medication and getting people to interact with society?
Well, these are such big questions. We need to do a whole show on cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of the gold standard of therapy now. I mean, post-Freudian, post-psychoanalysis. And then there's a third wave. This would be called second wave. Third wave is acceptance and commitment therapy, which I know we have coming up later in the show. But cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy really requires the therapist to help the patient understand the irrationality, the negativity, the dysfunctionality of their own belief system. You know, is it realistic to think that just because I go to the grocery store, I'm going to have a panic attack? How likely is it? How possible is it? Where's the evidence to suggest that that will happen? So I teach, and any cognitive behavioral therapist teaches the patient to challenge the irrationality and the negativity of their thinking. Right. And it's to essentially replace those thoughts with more positive, constructive, life-enhancing rather than life-interfering thoughts.
Redirecting
but not easy.
That. Not easy.
Not easy.
And medication?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
You know, lots of studies are suggesting and have suggested for many years that psychotherapy plus meds is a better, alternative than one versus the other, or one or the other. Medications have their own issues, their side effects. There's a placebo effect. I think I know we're running out of time, but I would love to talk about each of these things on a whole show, honestly.
We have so much more to discuss, and thankfully we have time. So don't go away, because when we come back, we're talking about general anxiety disorder and continue our conversation on ways to treat anxiety. Have you ever heard of an emotional support animal? Well, what's the point of them? Well, Dr. Paula Levine is going to tell us, and we'll have one joining us on set, so you don't want to miss it. And if you have any questions for Dr. Levine, please call us on our toll-free number, 855-796-4475. And remember to visit our website, allhealthtv.com, to submit questions for the experts, or to find out more about the Health Channel on South Florida PBS. We'll be right back.
It started with the original care package and millions more like it, passed from hand to hand across land and sea to help survivors in the aftermath of war. As we grew, we found better ways to help those in need, ways to make a real difference, not just today, but tomorrow as well. Be the difference in people's lives. Help deliver lasting change at care.org.
Dear humans, I stand here today not for myself, but for every tail wagger, sloppy kisser, and curtain ninja. I stand here for each one of the nearly 4,100 dogs and cats killed in shelters each day, asking you to join our cause and help us make sure every best friend has a chance to meet one of their own. With Best Friends Animal Society leading the charge, and your help, we can save them all.
Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida Studios in Coral Gables. And I'm joined by Dr. Paula Levine, Director of the Miami Counseling Resource Center. Welcome back, Dr. Levine. And like we said, we have so much to talk about and so little time, but we're gonna get to it. And we're gonna talk about generalized anxiety disorder and how that differs from a panic attack. So what are the differences?
The worrier.
Okay.
Not worrier, but they're warriors as well. The constant worrier. It's just that. So we talked last segment about how much of panic attack and panic disorder has to do with the physiological, the cardiorespiratory system. The worrier may be perfectly calm from here down.
Okay.
But up here, what if? It's generalized anxiety disorder. It's general. Think of the language. It's just kind of all the time.
It's all the time.
And sometimes not very situational. It's not about when one thing is really going wrong in your life and you get anxious, and it's sustained because over time that situation has to resolve itself.
Right.
You're in a crisis in your relationship. One of your kids is sick. Things go on in our lives where, yes, our anxiety elevates. That adrenaline sort of rushes to kind of help rescue us and channel us and direct us. And when we don't always calm down, that's very different from a panic attack, for example, that does have that 20-minute sequence to it. But when we're in a state of anxiety all the time, people are restless, they can't sleep, they're overly medicated because the world is a dangerous place.
And there's so many symptoms. We do have a graphic that shows some of those signs and symptoms of anxiety, and I can relate to a few of these so well. And like you mentioned, it's almost that voice in your head that you can't quiet so easily. Can you talk a little bit about these signs and symptoms?
Well, this list is not so different from the last list we looked at in the last segment. It's actually almost the same, except the other list was broken up for some reason. But these are all the symptoms of a panic attack, except you're not having them at that high level, and you don't have that cluster of 4 that I mentioned. But, we talked about feeling weak or tired, trouble sleeping, I mentioned just a few minutes ago. They're all there, but they're just there at kind of a low level. So maybe your heart's beating just a little more quickly, particularly at certain times of the day than, somebody else's heart would be. Or maybe you're just more prone to perspire. Sleep disturbance is very, very common. But the first one is what it feels like. I'm nervous, I'm irritable, I'm on edge.
It's that second one to me, that sense of danger, the panic and doom, that what if it's coming?
Yeah, the world is a dangerous place, yeah. And that's from caveman days, that response, that looking to the left and looking to the right. It's from what big animal is chasing me? That's even pre-caveman. That's like one big animal is chasing a smaller animal. Then along comes the caveman, And, you know, he wants to get the hunt home before he gets chased down and eaten. So we have to look around to see what's going on and to see where the threat is. And we have to count on our fight or flight response, which, by the way, I have to say to anybody out in the audience who doesn't care to hear about panic attacks or panic disorder, whatever, doesn't even maybe want to wrap their minds around it, this fight or flight response is from a gabillion years ago. That's what a panic attack is, except it's happening at the wrong time.
Absolutely.
There's no bear chasing us.
We all have that inside
exactly,
of us. We
exactly.
all do. One of the things that we touched upon during the break, you and I, is how important support is when someone that you know is having an anxiety disorder or has a panic attack.
Right.
And it doesn't just affect the person, it affects the people around them as well. And an interesting fact is that anxiety affects close to 7 million people.
Yes.
And early in the show, we mentioned therapy as a common and effective treatment for panic disorder, and same goes for generalized anxiety.
Right.
But more and more people are turning to emotional support animals for treatment. And we actually have a package talking a little bit about that, why animals are great for this emotional support.
This dog, Old Cooper, is good for his owner's health.
And there are overwhelming data. When you hold a cat, when you groom a horse, when you pet a dog, there is a surge of feel-good hormones that we can measure. Prolactin, oxytocin, and dopamine.
Mayo Clinic oncologist Dr. Edward Cragen says owning a pet also boosts your immune system.
That your immune system becomes more robust, more infection-fighting when you have that reason to live in your life.
Pets have other health benefits too. The CDC says they may lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and feelings of loneliness.
You don't have to have a dog or a cat. Any animal that depends on you, even a fish, could make a good pet.
Pets give you a reason to get up and get moving. Dr. Cragen has a saying, it's get pets, not pills, because pets can help improve your mental and physical health.
So we actually have an emotional support dog with us, my co-host. Please say hello to Sugar.
Hi,
and already
Sugar.
I'm feeling instantly happy here. So what exactly does this mean? We saw this package. They're saying it increases happiness, it increases well-being if you have an emotional support dog. Do you see that often with patients?
I have to say I don't see it often.
Okay.
I've had some patients bring their dogs to therapy, so clearly they have one, and I'm fine with that because I'm a dog lover. I've written the letter, the very important letter, the travel letter for countless patients so that they can take their dogs with them on airplanes. And I agree with what we just saw, that, yeah, what's interesting about the clip we just saw wasn't necessarily talking about just support animals. It was just talking about animals. And animals do have that effect on us physiologically. They take care of loneliness, and there's someone to come home to. And if they lower blood pressure and heart rate and the other things that it seems to have alluded to, so be it. I mean, I'm all for it.
And it can't hurt to have a little precious dog like this. And I know that when you write the letters, can you talk to me about that? What do you write in these letters? And I know that each of the pets comes with an emotional support certificate and a badge to show that they do have a purpose. And what do you write in the letter? What's the process like?
Well, it has to be in my letterhead, number one. I mean, I've been given instructions for the letters, so I know what to do. I have to say that the person is in therapy for treatment for an anxiety disorder, and I can't claim that I'm the one that recommended the therapy dog because obviously I don't do that very often. Usually the patient comes to me and already has that in place.
Right.
And I basically say this patient needs to fly and is unable to fly without her support dog, and so it's a part of her therapy, and I recommend that you allow them to travel together.
Right.
And I've never been turned down. I mean, the letter's always been accepted by whoever the authorities are. I'm not sure how this works exactly at the airport, but you know.
And like you said, anything that provides an emotional well-being to improve quality of life. But I know that one of the things we discussed is that you can't just use the support dog to take the place of, let's say, therapy in itself or medication or something in addition to this help, correct?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that are watching right now that have a support dog that aren't in therapy and maybe aren't on medication. And it's interesting that the clip just ended with, pets, not pills. I think whatever works. I really do. I think whatever works. We haven't had a full discussion yet about medication, but my gosh, if someone could do this and this little guy I don't know if Sugar's a girl or a guy.
Sugar's a girl.
Sugar's a girl. Well,
Sugar's a
she's got pink
beautiful
ears.
little
What's
lady.
wrong with me? Sugar's a
Beautiful
girl.
little lady.
If Sugar can calm me down and I don't have to
Yes.
take Xanax or Ativan because I've got Sugar, I'm all for Sugar.
She's our Canaan and Xanax. If we're
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
about support, we talked about support and just also support system. You know, I think that when you have anxiety, it also affects the people around you. So I know that's something that you see often with patients. Sometimes people don't understand what they're going through. What are your 2 cents on that, Dr. Levine?
You know, everyone needs a supportive family, but support can be the wrong thing at times.
Okay.
The person suffering anxiety, especially if they're in good therapy, will be taught and will hopefully learn that the reassurance has to come from within.
Okay.
You know, that it isn't white knuckling my husband's hand on the airplane that is allowing me to fly. Because what if the next trip I take, he can't join me?
Right.
You know, and it isn't someone sitting in the seat beside me in the car that's really allowing me to drive comfortably. That may be the beginning of treatment, by the way. So we haven't really talked about something called graduated exposure. We haven't talked about phobias yet, but that would be one way of getting someone who hasn't driven a car in a long time. Remember we talked about acrophobia,
Right.
to begin, you know, okay, we're going to start by having you drive around the block and having your best friend or your spouse beside you, but eventually you're going to get way further than just driving around the block, number one. We're going to get you on highways again. And number two, we're going to get you without that support person sitting beside you.
And that's that gradual exposure
Sure.
you talk about, sort of like
Exactly.
little by little.
Exactly. And of course, by the way, a support dog could work that way too.
Now, my question is as well, you use the example of the plane, and so often people with a fear of flying will pop a Xanax or an
Right.
Ativan.
Yeah.
Medication like this, which is sort of works at the moment.
Yes.
How do you manage it so you take it as needed and it doesn't become a habit of just using
Yeah.
it as an excuse to, I'm having an anxiety attack, I need
Right.
it?
That's a big question because you made the distinction and you're correct. There are some medications that we take and the prescription and the right way to take that medication is daily.
Right.
And there are others. Xanax is the most common, truthfully, for something like performance anxiety or fear of flying. And that is what psychiatrists recommend, and I'll recommend it too if someone doesn't see a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
but they're going to get their prescription from their general physician. That, yeah, the one thing to talk about might be Xanax. 0.25, not even 0.50, not even 1. A 0.25, that's a quarter of a 1, can usually get someone calm enough that if they really have to take a flight and they haven't completed their therapy yet, and they're going to lose their job if they don't get on that plane. I'm
Right.
working with somebody right now who needs to fly to Helsinki in 3 weeks, and he's just come to me for the first time. I said, I'm not a magician. I don't know if I can get you to Helsinki in 3
In
weeks.
3
but
weeks.
Some therapy and maybe a Xanax might get you to Helsinki.
Right.
So yes, as needed, and likely as needed won't become addictive. It's when we take something on a you hear about the benzos, you
Right.
take them on a regular basis, you're going to become habituated to taking something that you take on every day.
And this is such a broad topic, and there's so much to discuss. And one of the things that when we come back is we're going to be talking about social anxiety. And can meditation and mindfulness help? And we'll find out when we return. I know something that you talked about, the mindfulness
Right.
and breathing. And if you have a question for Dr. Levine, please call us on our toll-free number, 855-796-4475. And remember to visit our website, allhealthtv.com, to submit questions for all of Baptist Health experts or to find out more about the Health Channel. Listen to Sugar. She wants you to go on our website. We'll be right back.
Everyone deserves a decent place to live.
Everyone.
When a future homeowner partners with Habitat for Humanity to build or improve a home, they build a better future for themselves and their families.
For my family.
For my family.
For my family.
With a little help, we all have the potential to stand on our own.
Potential. Potential.
Potential.
Visit Habitat.org to provide help to families like these today.
Migraines are pulsating headaches that often occur on one side of the head. If you suffer from migraines, you're familiar with the throbbing, one-sided pain that makes you sensitive to light and noise and causes nausea or vomiting. Some home remedies for migraine pain include changing your diet, monitoring triggers, scalp massages, using an ice pack, anti-inflammatory herbs like peppermint or chamomile, and staying hydrated. Contact your primary care physician about treatment options available to you today.
Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida Studios in Coral Gables. And I'm joined by Dr. Paula Levine, Director of the Miami Counseling Resource Center. Now, afraid of being judged by others, being self-conscious in everyday social situations, and avoiding meeting new people, these could all be signs of social anxiety disorder. But some might think, no, I'm just shy, I'm introverted. Doctor, what is the difference when you have patients come in and you say,
You said it. And people really misunderstand social phobia, so let me just explain. It's not fear of being social or fear of socializing. It is fear of scrutiny, evaluation, judgment, making a fool of yourself. That's what people fear. That's what they bring into the room. That's what they bring into the situation.
Is it like, what if they don't like me? What are they saying about me?
What if they don't like me? What if I'm judged? It's what if it's fear of scrutiny. And you don't, it's not paranoia, but I'm walking into the room, and instead of just maybe looking for someone to talk to or noticing a friend, I'm already worrying about fear of being judged.
You shut down and you automatically...
I'm afraid to, so you know, I perhaps I appear like a shy person, but a shy person is just shy. That's
right.
A temperament or a personality trait. And shyness can be grown out of as well. We talk about shy kids who blossom as adults.
Right.
But that shy child wasn't fearing scrutiny. That shy child perhaps just preferred to read rather than be outgoing or the boisterous one in a group.
Right, where someone with social anxiety really is just, they're terrified inside.
Right, terrified inside, terrified, and you don't know what it is.
So how do you work through something like an social anxiety? Because as we need to live in the world, we've got to go to work.
Right, so that's where cognitive behavioral therapy really works very, very well. Because you're the socially phobic person, and you tell me, I walk into a room and I think I look nice and I think I'm dressed well and whatever, and the first thoughts I have are, what are they thinking about me? How are they judging me? What if I say a stupid thing? What if the wrong words fall out of my mouth? So I ask you, well, have you had any evidence that that's ever happened?
Now, is social anxiety tied into other phobias? Because we talked about the fear of eating in front of people, fear of maybe going to a movie theater. Is it all sort of tied together, or is that different?
It depends on what that bottom line fear is. That's why I was trying to talk to you about what's the evidence. We can go back to that evidence, likelihood, possibility, because that's the cognitive behavioral therapy. But to answer this question, okay, if I'm agoraphobic and fearing a panic attack, I may not want to go to a restaurant other than that one comfortable one I mentioned that's maybe, 100 feet from my home.
Right.
Because I'm afraid of a panic attack. If I have social phobia, I might go to the restaurant, but as soon as I start to get involved with whomever I've come to meet, I'm wondering about what they're thinking of me. Are they judging, are they scrutinizing? And not how I look and not what I'm wearing. Maybe the last thing that just came out of my mouth, that just sounds stupid. That's very, very different than I'm sitting there in fear of a panic attack.
Right.
Do you see the difference? The social phobic, yes, they can have panic attacks, but that's not their fear. Their fear is, it's the tyranny of the what ifs again.
What if they're
What if you're judging me?
me?
What if you're scrutinizing me? What if I've said the wrong thing? What if I'm about to make a fool of myself? There's a lot of shame involved.
Now, I almost feel this can be something that can start at a young age, if
Yes.
not redirected in a different direction.
Yes.
So is this something you see in young patients?
I do.
Okay.
And that's when it's misunderstood and misinterpreted as shyness.
Really?
And the parent will bring my child in and bring their child in and say, they don't speak very much when they're socializing. They don't want to have play dates. They don't want to have people over. The teacher says they never put their hand up in class. They avoid things like when it's time to do an oral book report or a group project that requires presenting to the class. They're shy. And I, talk with the child.
Are
and
those
I
red
realize
flags for you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because they're fearing scrutiny. They're not just shy, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
It's not just that personality trait. If the child is willing to admit, and of course in therapy, the kid has to get comfortable and we talk, and what's really going on that you don't even want to be in Mr. Smith's class because he does an oral book report once a year. Oh my God, I'm afraid I'll freeze, or I'm afraid a stupid thing will come out of my mouth and people will laugh at me.
Now, the stage fright, that's something that we hear not only young children, but as you get older, some adults almost have these symptoms of sweating and
Yes.
heart pounding. And
Yes.
that's, would stage fright be considered under the umbrella of a social anxiety?
We call it sometimes performance anxiety, which may just be a fancy term for old-fashioned stage fright. I'm not so sure stage fright is fear of scrutiny.
Okay.
Because these are people who perform and they're in front of audiences all the time. That may just be a rush of adrenaline that's almost necessary to give. I once saw Katharine Hepburn interviewed, and she said, if I don't have nervousness for about 180 seconds, she said 180 seconds, because she means
specific.
3 minutes, and then it takes about another 3 minutes once I'm on the stage for it to calm down, meaning her heart rate. She said, I'm not going to give a good performance. I need that adrenaline, is what she was saying. But look at that as a better interpretation, a positive interpretation, attributing to the adrenaline rush a good thing. It happens to me for a good reason.
Take it a negative and turn it into sort of a positive.
Exactly.
But one of the things that you say is that avoidance is not a good thing. So someone who has social anxiety and won't go to that party or won't go to a meeting because they want to avoid eye contact, afraid of being judged. When you avoid, you actually make that anxiety worse.
Yes.
Tell me.
That's true for everything. That's why I say we need a whole show on. Avoidance is the worst thing anybody can do for their fear, is to keep avoiding the thing it is that they fear, whether they're fearing a panic attack per se, whether they're fearing, like for example, flying phobia. Some people, 90% of flying phobics fear the panic attack on the plane. I'm trapped, I can't get out of here. But another 10% or so do fear the plane crashing. They don't want to die.
That's my fear.
Okay. They don't want to go over an ocean. Turbulence absolutely convinces them that this is the flight that's going to lead to a crash and lead to them dying.
I actually have to read articles about turbulence to know that turbulence doesn't mean the plane. In order to,
it means it's something positive, actually, that the pilot's trying to find smoother ground, which I tell all my patients to, but they don't necessarily believe
Not
me.
in that moment when you have anxiety.
No. But so back to the question of avoidance. So avoiding what you fear reinforces the fear. How? Because every time you avoid, I didn't have to go. Or how about fleeing? I tried to go to the party. Oh my God, my anxiety was so high, my fear of scrutiny, my social anxiety. I said to my friend, I'm not feeling well, I got out of here.
Will
you go the next night to the party you're invited to? You felt so good because you fled. Back to the fight or flight response. The anxiety comes down, the adrenaline comes down when we flee, when we're in a safe or neutral place.
You're only snowballing it.
Absolutely. And some people with phobias, for example, flying phobia, goes on for years until they finally have to take a necessary flight, like this man who will lose his job if he doesn't fly to Helsinki. Yeah.
Now, how do you work with someone that has a social anxiety? How do you stimulate sort of positive thoughts before having to do one of these interactions?
Well, the CBT really, really helps, because the fear of being scrutinized is all in your head.
Right.
When I say, have you any evidence that anybody's ever said to you, gee, you just made a fool of yourself. That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Has that ever happened to you in your whole life?
No.
Well, no. How likely then, or how probable is it that it will happen? So that's the CBT challenge of turning the thoughts around. So, well, I can move my thoughts over to a more positive place and say, hey, my therapist is helping me see I don't have any evidence to support these crazy irrational beliefs. The likelihood of my beliefs actually coming true is pretty unlikely. I'm going to start taking more risks. So that's how we work from sort of body, mind to behavior. The body, we've talked a lot about. The CBT is working on the mind, challenging those irrational beliefs. Behaviorally, we approach, we don't avoid. And so we try. We go to the party for 10 minutes. The next time we stay half an hour, you know?
Exactly, baby steps.
Baby steps,
But I think it's important, Dr. Levine, to make note that when you are with someone who's experiencing anxious episodes, they're in a very different state of mind. We wouldn't say rational. So having someone like yourself sort of give them that rational perspective also helps.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, yes, yes. But I'm not with them.
Right, but I'm saying.
Yes. So part of what happens in therapy is memorize this. Take this home with you. We're here together, you and I, for an hour. I'm throwing everything against the wall and hoping something sticks. I mean, that's kind of my approach. And I'll, in any given moment, I might be trying to accomplish 10 different things at once. I know we're going to talk about mindfulness in a minute.
I want to talk about mindfulness now. So mindfulness and meditation, because you're a big believer in that.
I am.
Tell me a little bit about what mindfulness and meditation is. I think sometimes you think, oh, it's just all namaste.
No, it's not all namaste, but our Western world is finally being indoctrinated with the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. And I'm saying mindfulness and meditation separately because a lot of my patients and people in general get very nervous about the idea of meditating.
Right.
So, yes, we've adopted something now in the Western culture that we call mindfulness meditation, but we can be mindful without meditating, and we can meditate without being mindful.
What is mindful meditation for those that don't know what the term means?
Okay, so mindfulness, quite simply, John Kabat-Zinn had the best definition. Being mindful is being present, being in the present moment, paying attention in a particular way on purpose, which is a shame, that we have to do it on purpose.
Right.
We have to pull ourselves into the present moment. So it's paying attention in a particular way in the present moment on purpose. How many people do that? And how good is that for anxiety?
We forget.
Well, but anxiety is all about the what ifs. What if in a minute? What if in an hour? What if in a day? What if in a year?
We're non-existent.
How
We're
about
not
right
now.
How about right now? So part of just even teaching about mindfulness, about enjoying, capturing, being in the present moment is something I can work on with people right there in that moment. If we want to do it with meditation, if people kind of are open to the idea, then I do a lot of mindfulness meditation practice with my patients. Maybe I do a 3-minute exercise or a 5 or a 10. I have them record my voice if they want to. I tell them all the apps that are available for them to do some of this on their own.
Okay, right now, you and I, let's do a breathing exercise, a short one that you give someone that at that moment might be
experiencing. So Kathy,
yes.
The first thing I'd like you to do is uncross your legs. And next, and just allow your hands to sit comfortably in your lap, either just so that they're symmetrical. And if you don't mind, and if it's easy for you, just take a moment and close your eyes. And we're on camera, I know that. Just allow yourself to notice what's happened with those 3 simple instructions. Sitting quite comfortably and still, uncrossing your hands and your feet, allowing your eyes to close. And notice that I haven't even mentioned your breathing yet. Is anything beginning to happen? A little bit?
Just like a relaxed.
Okay. So now what I'd like you to do is just pay attention to your breathing, where it is right now. Sort of that focus on the shallow upper chest breathing, because that's how we breathe normally. And that's certainly what we're doing now as we're talking to each other. And allow that breath to just deepen in its own way. You'll find yourself taking in some fresh oxygen, allowing it to travel down through your chest, through your rib cage, to your abdomen.
We're going to continue this at the break.
See, there we
during the
are.
break,
We're
because
on
I
the way.
have to go to commercial, and we're going to be talking about obsessive compulsive disorder. It's often portrayed as being funny, but if you ask anyone who suffers from the disorder, they'll tell you there's nothing humorous about it. In fact, people with OCD constantly fight anxiety caused by being afraid of their own thoughts. And we're talking about that in detail with Dr. Levine when we come back. And if you have any questions for Dr. Levine, please call us on our toll-free number, 855-796-4475. And remember to visit our website, allhealthtv.com, to submit questions to the experts. We'll be right back, and I'm going to keep breathing.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks for teaching me about teamwork and leadership.
Thanks for showing me that sports help me stay healthy and do well in school. And thank you for teaching me about concussion.
Letting me know that I should tell you if I think I have a concussion. And how to protect my head and brain. Because one day, I want to be a teacher, an astronaut, scientist, or a coach, just like you. Thank you for protecting my future.
Did you know that people born from 1945 through 1965 have the highest rates of hepatitis C, but most don't know they're infected? People can live for decades without symptoms, but over time, hepatitis C can cause serious health problems. If you were born during these years, the CDC now recommends that you get a blood test for hepatitis C, so talk to your doctor and find out if you have hepatitis C. It could save your life. No more.
Many websites selling medication may look professional and legitimate, but the vast majority of sites selling prescription drugs are doing so illegally. Criminals use websites to sell counterfeit medications that may contain life-threatening toxins. Dot Pharmacy is a website verification program that helps you identify safe and trustworthy online pharmacies. Purchasing medicine online can be safe and easy. Just look for pharmacy to the right of the dot in website addresses.
Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida Studios in Coral Gables. And I'm joined by Dr. Paula Levine, Director of the Miami Counseling Resource Center. Now, have you seen the movie As Good as It Gets? I'm sure many of you have, I know I have. In it, Jack Nicholson portrays a peculiar character with a series of wacky daily routines. You may know someone who's overly concerned with cleanliness or who has elaborate rituals for daily life and thought to yourself, how absurd. But obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, is no laughing matter. In fact, it's a form of anxiety. Doctor, OCD is something that's joked about so often, and you often hear it with like, oh, I'm so OCD, I gotta keep my house clean.
Exactly.
But that's not OCD.
No.
So what is OCD?
I just wanted to pick up on your language, which is so interesting, because earlier I said, you know, we're all panicking. I'm in a panic. I mean, we overuse the language. So you're right. It used to be I'm so anal. Now I'm so OCD.
Yes.
So it's misused, and I don't like that. I want to save our terminology for the right place, but you know, things lose themselves in popular culture. But to answer your question, O and C. D stands for disorder. The O is the obsession. The C is the compulsion. A true, fully blown obsessive compulsive disorder has both. We'll talk about some things on the fringe that don't always involve both. So my obsessions are my thoughts, my compulsions are my actions. So when you see Jack Nicholson avoiding cracks on the sidewalk, I don't remember that scene exactly, but I don't remember what his obsessions were. But for example, the most common one would be, I'm obsessed about germs, I'm afraid of getting contaminated, I wash my hands. Oh, we're there. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, exactly what you mentioned.
Yes. Harming thoughts. Okay. So it's funny. I didn't see it on the screen. So if I'm obsessed about germs and contamination, I can do one of many things. I can wash my hands excessively. That's a very common compulsion that we know about. I can shower up to 6 times a day. I can do innumerable loads of laundry every single day, just because what did I touch that might be dirty, that, you know. I can redo my same washed clothes.
Right.
I'm giving you true life examples. This is not me, but
Right.
these are patients that I've seen. So here's an interesting question. The ordering and arranging things in a particular precise way, you might say, well, I do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a neatnik, you're a neatnik. It doesn't mean you have OCD. If you're ordering and arranging things in a particular precise way because that's going to keep you from killing your mother, then you might have OCD. Does that make sense? I'm sorry to use such an awful example.
It does make sense.
But you've got the thoughts about harming. Oh, it's not there, is it?
But that's
very,
one
very common obsession. Sorry, our thoughts about harming others.
Yes, okay.
And our thoughts about doing harm to oneself, by the way, or thoughts about harm coming to me. But the obsessions and the compulsions often just don't match each other.
Right.
Like fear of germs and hand washing kind of match each other.
Right.
But you wonder, well, how is that the compulsion that person developed in order to sort of mitigate or manage the obsession? It's the brain.
It's the brain.
The brain operates in very strange ways.
But like you said, it doesn't mean just because I'm a clean freak or I wash my hands that I have this disease.
No. But if you were doing 6 loads of laundry a day and redoing some that you'd washed because you fear contamination, or you knew that there was an epidemic at school, and your kids might have touched, even with their shirt sleeve, the shirts of the kids who have the flu bug, and yet their parents sent them to school, and you're afraid of illness in your home, you
wash.
It's ritualized, but over and over and over again.
How do you diagnose that, and how do you work with someone that has these obsessions and compulsions? Because if they're specific like that, how do you break that habit?
You know, we haven't talked a lot about, well, how do you diagnose? It's not so difficult to diagnose.
Okay.
Again, people are knowledgeable. Patients walk in saying, I think I have OCD. I mean, everybody Googles everything these days. That's, again, the same about panic attacks. When I told you agoraphobia, we didn't even know that it had panic attacks attached to it until, you know, recent, not 40 years ago, that's for sure. So it's not too difficult to determine someone who has normal sort of neat kind of habits from someone who's really crossing the line, who's really going overboard. The treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy, but more than anything else, exposure. Exposure, again, to the feared situation. You're going to let your kids' clothes sit in the hamper tonight, and you're not going to wash them.
And as much as you want to grab and throw it in the laundry, you're not.
Yeah. You know, one of the treatment centers to treat hand washing, what they actually do is they turn off the water faucets, except for your 1 3-minute shower a day.
Wow.
So you can't wash your hands. You are prevented from washing your hands. So that's the treatment for OCD is actually called ERP, Exposure and Response Prevention. I'm exposing myself to those faucets. I am dying to turn them on, but my response is being prevented by the fact that there's no water coming.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
You have no other option.
Yeah, that's a very big example. Otherwise, I have to teach patients when they're not in an inpatient treatment center to prevent the response themselves. You know, you may not touch that, or you may not use another roll of paper towel to wipe off your cell phone. I mean, I'm using your real life examples.
Right.
And just live with the anxiety. It will subside. And again, don't reinforce it by doing the behavior.
Right. And according to the National Institute of Mental Health, there's an earlier age of onset in boys than girls, but offsets after age 35 don't occur. Am I correct on that? Why is it, especially...
Did you say offsets?
That it doesn't happen after a certain age when you're older, and it generally see it in boys and at a younger age. Is that true?
I'm not sure about that.
Where do you normally see the OCD? Is it normally younger children or older?
Late teens and early 20s.
That's when it begins to develop?
That's when I see it. So that's when they come for treatment. I'm working with a young man now. His OCD started at about age 14. I worked with a young man not too long ago who had pretty severe OCD at the age of 12. And his compulsions were counting compulsions.
Right.
And he called them his evens. So, for example, he had to count to 3 about just about anything that was going on in his life, but if he did this 3 times, he would have to do this 3 times. His evens, he'd have to even everything out. If he did a high five on the door frame, he would have to do it again with his right hand. just to control that. He had thoughts of harming people in his life. So to control the thinking, that's what I mean by the
Right.
rituals may have nothing to do with the actual obsession at times.
Wow. I got good news and bad news. The bad news is we're wrapping. And the good news is we're going to have you back. So
Oh,
we're going
I
to
hope
talk
so.
so much more about this. And we've learned so much today. So thank you so much, Dr. Levine, for joining us on the show today. And do us a favor and take out your phones, follow us on social media, and follow us at All Health TV. Bye. See you next time.